We need to talk about Obsidian's new game, Avowed, a single-player first-person RPG that just isn't what a lot of people seem to expected it to be. And in today's Bethesda Extended, we actually got an interview about Avowed, so we got some more information on it to talk about as well. Now, I'm personally very excited for it still because it looks like another version of The Outer World, but just based in the fantasy world that Obsidian has created and built on from their Pillars of Eternity series. I also trust the creators of Fallout New Vegas just to know how to make a good single-player RPG game. And to me, this gameplay looks epic, but we kind of need to talk about why people are a bit confused. You see, 2 years ago, we saw this very dark, gritty, CGI, fantasy-looking trailer from Obsidian, and I'm going to watch it with you guys now. We've got like the arrows on the battlements, the grey sky, very muted tones, and I know it's CGI and not actual gameplay, but the thing that I think is quite confusing to people is this looks like dark medieval fantasy, whereas what we're getting is more sort of cheerful, light-hearted fantasy in comparison. And I think a lot of people saw this gameplay and they saw it as like a proof of concept of what the vibe of the game was going to be like. And I still remember this moment when he pulled out his sword and a spell in the other hand, and I was just blown away with, oh my god, we're getting a first-person fantasy RPG from Obsidian. But then when we see the trailer and some of the locations and landscape is a bit more vibrant and colourful and kind of reminds me a bit more of The Outer Worlds compared to what that CG trailer looked like. And I'm left a bit confused, like, okay, this is a different approach. I'm still very excited about it, Obsidian, but I can understand why some people online are like, wait, this game looks like it has a different feel. So let's rewatch the Obsidian Avowed trailer together and just break down what's actually here and what I'm excited for. In-game footage and cinematics, which is always great to see. Hopefully we will be able to pilot a ship, could you imagine? I don't think we will though. Gave me Assassin's Creed vibes when I first saw this.
People don't like you very much, do they?
So that's one of our followers, by the way.
Sent here to the living lands.
And this landscape, I mean, this looks very natural and very normal. We do have a wispy purple cloud of energy going on over here though. But I can see lots of little castles and lighthouses and little features that I can discover in the distance. But then here we have lots of multicolored mushrooms, a Sovngarde looking sky. It almost looks very dreamlike in its creation. And then what's really strange is this looks almost steampunk in a fantasy universe. Like this guy right here, he's doing something at some kind of massive organ control panel, which makes me hopeful that we'll get some of that wacky don't take yourself too seriously vibe that we got from Fallout New Vegas.
Couldn't bother to come himself.
So right here we see dual wielded flintlock pistols and this looks insanely cool. Then we're back to this Sovngarde looking surreal place.
To investigate some plague that seems to be corrupting our very souls.
And now we get our first look at a plague-ridden cave bear. And the color and lighting looks much more natural and more grounded. And then we get to see the first-person combat, and damn, that looked cool. That moment where he just kicks him and then he ragdolls off the cliff felt impactful. And here we get some awesome spell casting mechanics, which looks amazing.
The way you fight. The power you wield.
You can actually raise the roots up from the ground to root this guy in position. This is like a bandit dual wielding 2 daggers, and then I love how the trees have all these vines growing up them. The world looks very interesting and I'm excited to explore that.
The secrets you keep. You're either here to save us or destroy us.
That looks fun. That's the power we wield? God damn.
So now that you have all this power, what are you gonna do with it?
Incredible. Bows, shields, archery, magic. I love it. Some kind of mad ground pound going on at the end there as well. And we released some kind of zero-G gravity effect that just sends everyone into the air, which we're controlling, and then we just finish them all, which looks nuts. And right here, when the magic actually explodes out from him, it looks so awesome. And at this point, he actually ground pounds and then pulls out his bow and just deletes the other guy, and the animations look so smooth. Our sword's actually on fire there, and we just burn him up. Right here, we also charge this ant-like creature with a shield, just like in Skyrim, which I think is awesome. It seems like there's such a collection of weapons, different spell types, and different combinations for us to put together, and that really excites me. So next, we're going to jump into the Avowed interview that just came out today in the Bethesda Extended Showcase.
We just saw this big reveal of Avowed, and there's so many little bits of information in there that I want to dig out and pick your brain around. But before we get into all that, I'm assuming that you don't need to have played Pillars 1 or 2 to really get into Avowed.
You're absolutely right. You don't need to have played Pillars 1 or 2. You can come to the world of Avowed fresh. We want this to be a welcoming experience to new players. But if you are a returning fan, there are some recognizable tidbits.
For people who have played Pillars 1 or 2, can you tease any more of just those general connections to the universe? And no major spoilers, of course.
Yeah. There are a couple returning characters that players might recognize from Deadfire in particular. Players who have played the original games will recognize some of the parts of the world and some of the factions. The Adirian Empire plays pretty heavily into the world of Avowed, so all of that will be familiar to returning players.
We do start to see some of that Pillars universe now in the Avowed setting, which is really exciting, and it's looking amazing so far. But can you confirm one thing for me? Are we still in Aora?
We're still in Aora, and specifically we're in a region called the Living Lands. So again, returning Pillars fans will recognize the Living Lands as this otherworldly frontier. It's very remote. It's relatively unknown. It's this very dramatic landscape full of all of these different valleys with these unique biomes and creatures, just a really unique visual perspective. And it's a wonderful frontiersy spot that's set for adventure. There's a lot that's undiscovered. And so that's the part of Aora that we're introducing players to in Avowed.
And we also see a character talking to us in the trailer. He seems like he might be a companion, because that would be a very Obsidian thing to do. So what's going on with that?
Yes, this is Kai, and he is one of the first companions you meet in the game. He's an Amawa. That's one of the unique species of the world of Aora. And Kai as a character brings a balance of this really battle-hardened perspective. He's seen a lot. He's served as a soldier and a mercenary, but he also has a really unique sense of humor. So he brings a spirit of levity and camaraderie to the party as well.
I fully expect the companions to be like the ones we had in the Outer Worlds, where they have likes and dislikes and their own personality and flaws and stuff.
Well,
and as he's talking to us, he's also kind of conveying, well, he's straight up saying that he's afraid of you and your abilities. But it's not like the heroes are the only powerful beings in this universe. So I'm curious what that means for who we are as the player character. Are we a watcher again, like in Pillars 1 and 2? Or maybe we have some connections to the spirit realm and beyond that gives us these terrifying abilities?
So you're not a watcher this time, but you do have a unique soul connection to the world that gives you a connection to the Living Lands and to some of the more mysterious forces at work there. The player is also being sent as an envoy of the Adirian Empire, and so they come with both a very mysterious aura, but also a certain sense of political urgency.
Kai also mentions a plague. That's another bit of detail that we get within the trailer. We see a very concerning growth on a lot of the creatures in the world. What can you tell us about this plague?
I can't say too much just yet, except that it is a unique soul plague that is devouring the Living Lands, and part of the player's mission in being sent here is to investigate and try to stop it.
We also saw a lot of combat in the trailer, and we see dual-wielding pistols, we see spells, we see swords, we see just a ton of abilities. A lot that actually is really reminiscent of the Pillars universe too, but
literally everything we want in a fantasy RPG game is here, which is great.
But those were isometric, top-down view games, and Avowed is a first-person game. So how did the team approach that same kind of fantasy combat, but in the first person for Avowed?
So we wanted to take that same depth and breadth of play styles and combat abilities and player fantasies, where you can play someone who's very magically attuned, more traditional fighter or ranger, and really invest in whatever play style is most appealing to you personally.
I love that we can play those traditional archetypes like mage, warrior, assassin, and I'm sure just like the Outer Worlds or Fallout New Vegas, we'll be able to spec our character into these different disciplines, but also explore all of them.
We wanted to take that depth and breadth and translate it into a first-person experience where you can feel the visceral nature of the attacks, feel the dynamism and the momentum of those attacks as you're executing them. And that means including a range of options like, as you noted, dual-wielding pistols, which is one of my favorites because you don't see that
So
often in
cool.
fantasy RPGs, but
I
also
know.
traditional sword and board, a whole host of magical abilities, a lot of things that'll be both a little bit familiar, but hopefully new to players as well.
Very
And
excited
I've got
for that.
one more question for you because I know the audience is going to want to know this one, but just how big is this game?
So it's going to be roughly comparable to something like Knights of the Old Republic 2 or The Outer Worlds. It is set up as a series of interconnected open zones that players can explore at their own pace.
I think the biggest comparison there is it's a similar size to the Outer Worlds and it's separately zoned in different playable areas, just like the Outer Worlds was. I'm interested to know how you're going to get from zone to zone, considering you don't have a spaceship and you're not landing on different planets though. And I hope that they've kind of built on the exploration and side content that they had in the Outer Worlds, because that's one of my favorite parts of an open world RPG.
You can invest in discovering every nook and cranny in the world, discovering every secret, finding every side quest, meeting every character, or you can have a much more focused experience. And it's really up to players and how much time they want to spend in the Living Lands, but I'm hopeful that they're going to spend a lot of time with us once Avowed releases.
She obviously said you can focus on the main quest and do just that, but these open world games really shine when you stumble upon interesting things, unique weapons, and little notes that tell you unscripted stories.
Nook and cranny in the world, discovering every secret, finding every side quest, meeting every character, or you can have a much more focused experience. And it's really up to players and how much time they want to spend in the Living Lands, but I'm hopeful that they're going to spend a lot of time with us once Avowed releases.
Well, count me in as one of those players because I definitely want to read and hear every line of dialogue, everything everyone has to tell me, and discover every inch of the Living Lands.
I do feel like from this interview alone that we've barely scratched the surface of what Avowed actually is. I think what Avowed really needs, and we'll probably see it next year now, is a full-on gameplay showcase, just actually showing us what it looks like, how it is to play, and some of the skill options and customization. I think if you guys really want to know what Avowed feels like, I recommend checking out my other video just over here, which is my entire Outer Worlds playthrough. Just go and click through that. You'll see the different dialogue options, multiple choices, branching quests and paths. That's just going to give you a feeling of what a first-person Obsidian game is going to be like.